Hi again. I'm Nandita of Curry Cravings. Today we are going to make a really fun and simple and rather delicious pulao or a rice pilaf made with something that's in season that you would never think of putting into a rice pilaf. This is fresh apricot, and fresh apricots are in season. So when you are in the grocery store, grab some, and let's get started on making an apricot pilaf, and I'll tell you what else is going in here. In a large pan, in your trusty nonstick pan, I'm going to start off with about a tablespoon of fresh ghee. I happen to make some ghee today. Now this dish benefits from ghee because it's a plain rice dish. Rice dishes are typically made in ghee. If you are looking to cut back on the fat that comes from ghee, you're more than welcome to use butter instead. If you are going vegan on this dish, use what works for you. But you need a little bit of fat to go into this dish in order to make it creamy, to make sure that the rice doesn't stick to the pan and the dish is luscious and flavorful. So while this is warming, let me show you a few of the ingredients that we have. We have some shahajira, which is the fine black cumin. We have some shallots, some ginger, and freshly cut apricot. So I think the pan's hot now. Let's get started on this bit. First things first, if you have my book Crack the Code, you'll know that I won't change the order of how things go in here just because it makes the process very easy to remember. But it's also a great way to make sure that all the spices that are going in at the right time. They're going to do their job. And your dish benefits from it greatly. So first things first was ghee with about a teaspoon of the fine black cumin or the shahajira. I have a single shallot cut up in slices. This I'm finding more and more comfort in using, and I like the flavor of it. They tend to also slice really well, and they're excellent in this dish. You want them sliced and not diced into finer bits, just because these will stick out in your pan as you work with them. All right. All you're looking for is for them to get a little bit mellow and soft. You're not looking for browning of the onions or the shallots. If you don't have shallots, use white onions, use red onions. Any of those are going to be fine. I have a teaspoon of finely diced ginger. Ginger does a wonderful thing with this dish. It gives you a little bite, but not a whole lot. And because this is a rice pulao or rice pilaf, you're going to want it to be mild in flavor, but not so boring that it's, you could have just eaten a pot of rice. So this is getting fragrant. Now in here, I'm going to turn the heat down to explain what is going in next. I have a small cinnamon stick, 2 pods of cardamom, sorry about that, and half of a star anise. Now I've seen star anise go into dishes, and you really don't need a whole lot. Very little is going to be good enough. This is already very, very fragrant. What's going in here next is kind of unusual. This is about half a cup of edamame that has been, parboiled. You can leave them as is. This is the frozen edamame that you'll find in most grocery stores in the freezer section. And to this, I'm going to add freshly cut apricots. Apricots are sweet. They tend to grab a little sour element as they cook, but they're very unusual for a rice dish. And if you think of adding peaches to a pot that's going to boil. This has that texture but has a very different flavor as compared to peach, even though they're both stone fruits. What I'm looking for is hoping that each of my slices is lightly covered and searing in the ghee that went into this pot. So they're covered and coated in the spices. Now on the side here, I have a cup and a half of rice that was soaking for about half hour in plain water. Let me put this in and I will tell you why we do this. What you want to do is have it soaking in the water until you're about ready to use it, and then just before you get ready to add it into your pot, you drain whatever water might be in here. A little bit of water back hanging in there in the pot, your container is not a bad thing. What you're doing is allowing the rice to soak as much of the water as it possibly can before it starts the cooking process. In doing so, the rice tends to cook as a longer grain, and this is one of those things people will forget to tell you, and it makes an incredible amount of difference in how your rice cooks. So you want to soak your basmati rice in just enough water to cover it for about 20 to 30 minutes before you start cooking. And I'm stirring this around to make sure that each of the grains of rice is coated in the ghee, in the spices, even though it's very mild, in all of the juices that are there. And I want to do this before I add the hot water to let it finish cooking. It's a very colorful dish as well. And now I can tell that any of the water that was in the rice from the soaked rice has evaporated or been absorbed into something else. So now I can add some water. Now this is not regular tap water. This is warm water. This was boiling until about a few minutes ago. So there's still a little steam coming off of this, and I'm going to do this carefully. For this recipe, because we are using something that has a little bit of liquid in here with the fruit, I am going to keep the water, I'm going to hold back about 1/4 cup of water in the pot, and I'm going to let this cook and decide towards the end, just before it finishes, if this is going to need some more water. Look at how colorful it is. It's got orange and white and green and little flecks of the cumin seeds. It's going to be a very pretty looking pulao. Now, as usual, I'm going to salt it to taste. Make sure that I'm not missing any pieces of rice and grains of rice anywhere. And I'm going to let this boil up until most of the water has evaporated before I cover it and turn the heat down. So this is going to take maybe another 5 minutes, and once that's done, it will be ready to be covered, and then you turn it down and let it cook for 10 to 12 minutes based on the stove that you're using. I find that most often me telling you how much time it's going to take kind of falls apart when I don't know what size of burner you're using. So cook this until your rice is done. Don't get impatient like me and try to, move the rice around a lot, because the rice grains will start breaking. But you can tell already that it's starting to plump up and the grains are getting to be their full size. So I'm going to watch this for another minute or so. Well, let me tell you a little more while this is going on. Let me tell you about the apricot. The apricot looks like this, and on the inside you're going to find a seed that is of this kind. It looks, if you are able to crack this open, the nut that's inside it tastes and looks very much like an almond, except it's a more round almond. But these are absolutely wonderful, and this kind of a pulao or pilaf will go wonderfully with a rich meaty dish like the biryani that I had made, or another meat dish, or another rich flavorful dish that has a dense amount of flavor, because this tends to be very sweet, not very sweet like dessert, but it has a much sweeter taste than you would normally expect. Look, all of these grains are taking up the water. They're starting to cook, and I'm going to cover this and let it cook for a few more minutes, and then when it's done, I'll share a picture of what the finished rice pulao looks like. I'll catch you in a bit. I hope you enjoyed this preparation, and I hope you're going to make this, but I'll show you what the finished dish looks like in a few minutes. Bye for now. I'll catch you in a little bit.